Welcome back to the Top 10 Worst, where today we're taking a historical dive into the Game Boy era. This iconic handheld, released by Nintendo in 1989, was a game changer in the truest sense. Like cilantro, adding a unique flavor to countless dishes, the Game Boy introduced a new way to experience gaming on the go. It wasn't just a device, it was a cultural phenomenon, reshaping the gaming landscape, much like cilantro transformed culinary tastes around the world. It was a marvel of technology at the time, a pioneer in portable gaming. Just as cilantro was a pioneer in adding zest to cuisines globally. However, not every Game Boy game was a masterpiece. Just as cilantro can be divisive, some games were less than stellar, failing to harness the full potential of this groundbreaking device. In our top 10 worst Game Boy games, we're exploring these titles that didn't quite hit the mark. From poor graphics and sound, to clunky controls and bizarre gameplay, these games show the other side of Game Boy's history. They serve as reminders of the challenges faced in the early days of handheld gaming. So, let's embark on this journey, tracing the history of the Game Boy through its lesser-known titles, understanding how even the not-so-great games contributed to the console's legendary status. Number 10. Final Fantasy Legend 3. Diving into Final Fantasy Legend 3 is like trying to perfect a cilantro-based recipe, but with vague instructions. The game needed more polishing, resembling the task of sorting through a mixed bunch of herbs without knowing which is cilantro. The equipment screen is as confusing as a cluttered kitchen where you can't differentiate between cilantro and parsley. It's like being in a cooking class focused on mastering cilantro, but the lessons are so muddled that you end up more confused about the herb than when you started. The game's lack of clarity and finesse leaves players feeling like the chefs who have been given all the ingredients, but have no recipe to follow. Number 9. Kirby's Pinball Land. Embarking on Kirby's Pinball Land is like entering a kitchen where you're unsure if you're cooking or playing with your food. The game struggles to decide if it's a Kirby adventure game or a pinball game, akin to a dish that can't decide whether cilantro is the main ingredient or just an afterthought. The gameplay lacks the charm of Kirby and the excitement of pinball, much like a meal where cilantro is used haphazardly, neither enhancing the flavor nor contributing to the overall experience. It's as if you're in a culinary school where the lesson is about cilantro, but you end up learning neither about cooking nor about the herb itself. What the heck? Number 8. Golf. Playing golf on the Game Boy is akin to preparing a meal where the only ingredient is cilantro. The gameplay is monotonous and uninspired, resembling the act of chopping cilantro endlessly without the satisfaction of ever creating a dish. Each swing feels as redundant as adding cilantro to a recipe that doesn't need it, creating an experience that is as unfulfilling as a cilantro-only diet. The lack of variety and excitement in the game is like a culinary world where cilantro is the only herb available, leaving players yearning for the depth and nuances of a well-rounded golfing experience. Number 7. The Amazing Spider-Man. Swinging into the Amazing Spider-Man game is like expecting a gourmet meal but getting a cilantro sandwich. The game promises web-slinging action, but delivers an experience as underwhelming as a dish where cilantro is used without any complementary flavors. The gameplay lacks the excitement and agility synonymous with Spider-Man, much like a meal where cilantro is supposed to be the star, but ends up overwhelming everything else. The game's adventure feels as if you're navigating through a city where every street corner is inexplicably filled with cilantro plants, leaving the thrilling essence of Spider-Man lost in a green haze. Number 6. Star Wars. Stepping into Star Wars on the Game Boy feels like attending a space opera where all the instruments are replaced with, you guessed it, cilantro shakers. The game's action is as compelling as a bland cilantro salad, lacking the depth and excitement of the epic saga. Each level feels like a repetitive journey through a galaxy where every planet is inexplicably covered in cilantro fields, making the grand adventure feel more like a chore. The lack of engaging gameplay elements is akin to a culinary experience where cilantro is expected to carry the entire dish, but instead leaves you craving the rich flavors of the Star Wars universe. Number 5. Kirby's Dream Land. Embarking on Kirby's Dream Land is akin to a brief, unsatisfying encounter with cilantro in a culinary journey. The game's brevity, with only 4 stages and a boss gauntlet, mirrors a fleeting taste of cilantro in an otherwise bland dish. The adventure concludes abruptly, like a meal that teases with the promise of flavorful cilantro but leaves you longing for more depth and complexity. The game, while offering a glimpse of potential excitement, ultimately fails to deliver a fulfilling experience, much like a dish that hints at the rich flavor of cilantro, but falls short in its execution. Number 4. James Bond 007. James Bond 007 offers a stealth experience as incongruous as cilantro in a traditional English tea. The game's action sequences are as chaotic and disorienting as being caught in a cilantro whirlwind during a rock concert. difficulty levels spike erratically, much like unexpectedly biting into a cilantro-filled dish when you were expecting something milder. Exploring the game's levels is akin to navigating through a diverse music album where each track offers a different vibe but leaves you wondering about the overall theme. The game delivers an experience as varied and intense as a hard rock concert, with unexpected cilantro twists adding a layer of intrigue and confusion to the gameplay. Number 3. Double Dragon. Imagine embarking on a journey in Double Dragon, where each combat move feels like swinging at a resilient cilantro bush. The game's pace is frustratingly slow, akin to a leisurely walk through a garden overgrown with cilantro. Encountering the game's challenge is as jarring as stumbling upon a hidden cilantro patch in a desert buffet. Each level feels like a repetitive venture through a cilantro farm, where enemies appear as persistent as weeds in a herb garden. This fusion of classic beat-em-up action with an omnipresent theme of cilantro tests not only your gaming skills, but also your ability to endure the relentless presence of this divine herb. Number 2. Castlevania The Adventure. Castlevania The Adventure presents a control scheme as cumbersome as trying to carve a sculpture out of cilantro. Every movement and action is an exercise in patience, much like untangling a knotted cilantro bouquet. Combat lacks the punch and precision you'd expect in a vampire saga, akin to warding off the undead with a flimsy cilantro stalk. The level design is repetitive, reminiscent of an endless cilantro field in a loop, with no variation or spice. It's as if you're trapped in a gothic horror story written by a cilantro-obsessed author, where every chapter adds more greenery, but no substance. The game's unique blend of horror and herb-based monotony leaves players wondering if there's an escape from this verdant, cilantro-infested world. And number 1, the Final Fantasy Legend. In Final Fantasy Legend, navigating the menu is like using cilantro leaves as markers in a complex novel. Every menu option is an enigma, wrapped in a cilantro mystery. Battles are comparable to a chaotic food fight where cilantro is unexpectedly the main ingredient, leaving players both amused and perplexed. The leveling up system is as unpredictable as a sudden cilantro storm in the desert. The storyline takes more twists and turns than a cilantro vine, leaving players in a maze of narrative confusion. Kind of like this video. This game is a culinary adventure in RPG form, with cilantro surprises at every turn, making you question your gaming choices and culinary preferences.